All right, the Hot Sutra, Triple Gem. Great completed Bodhisattvas. That time the Bhagavan was absorbed in
also, at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, Krishna, the very practice of divine perfection, as soon as the outburst I think it's also sentient nature. Then, the transport of the Venerable Sharaputta said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva.
Oh yeah, Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the divine perfection of wisdom? He said that to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Sharaputta. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to activity of the divine perfection of wisdom should look upon like this correctly and repeatedly. Against also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, are empty. It applies all phenomena in emptiness without characteristics of senses, and is not without state, not efficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no composition, practice, no cause. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no body, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. Eye element and soul not including no mind element and no mental. There is no suffering,
there is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment,
Bodhisattvas rely on the dwelling perfection of wisdom, exploration without fear, having completely passed beyond the aging point of view. All the Buddhas in the world 3 times also manifestly completely awakened to unsurpassable faith and complete enlightenment. For the manifest perfection of wisdom, the mantra of the great diligence, as mantra, the mantra equals the reality, which only pacifies all suffering, true knowledge, truth senses not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, the Bhagavan arose from that concentration from when the Bodhisattva Mahasattva I said was this as a lineage to his life that it is the process of perfection of peace and justice are indicated in the lineage as everyone in the spoken.
And those surrounding with their entirety on the Lord's ministers and others were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. I prostrate to the gathering of the Dakinis and the 3 chakras, who abide in the holy yoga of within space, by your powers of clairvoyance and magical emanations, look after practitioners like a mother her child. By the teachings of the 3 supreme jewels, possessing the power of truth, may inner and outer hindrances be transformed, may they be dispelled, may they be pacified. May all negative forces opposed to Dharma be completely pacified. May the host of 80,000 obstacles be pacified. May we be separated from problems and harmful conditions to Dharma. May all enjoyments be in accord with the Dharma, and may there be auspiciousness and perfect happiness here right now. Saji Pakishutin Metafran, Rivagutin Metapati, Sangi Shinjin Metapati, Tokunanda Shivashapashu, Guru Ratnamantaya.
Sanji Chanam
Toge Chanam La Chachu Badu Dani Kapsuji Dagi Chishi Vibhasana Tola Benchi Sangi Tokashu
Sanji
Chandan Toge Chanam La Chachu Badu Dani Kapsuji Dagi Chishi Vibhasana Tola Benchi Sangi Tokashu
Sanji
Chandan Toge Chanam La Chachu Badu Dani Kapsuji Dagi Chishi Vibhasana
강기 투진이 전에 따와 점수 범비체를 담비 준비든지 과동 제라 참세로
Lama Sangye Lama Che Deshe Lama Getude Kunji Chebo Lama Che
Lama Nama Chopa Chijil Tes George Nasa Tes Pargo Marla Chijil Tes George Nasa Tes Pargo Marla.
You went like very fast today. Are you all right?
Yeah, I've been listening to Geshe Samson, he goes very fast.
All right. You've been influenced by Geshe Samta?
Yeah.
I guess it's not a bad influence, is it?
And he goes fast.
So it's not COVID-19.
Fine.
Thank you. You're the cocktail maker. The cocktail.
Cocktail, yeah.
Hi. Hello.
Connie.
So do you live here in the vicinity or just visiting? Sorry? Visiting. From Brisbane or from Brisbane? Welcome. So are you from Indian descendants or? Bihar. Ah, namaste. How कैसा है?
अच्छा 먼저 something 쇼디 조디 아니 야가르키 나는 저 변루 주 쇼라야 장기요스 직진도 뭐 킹게기로.
So we are studying now a text that was composed by one of the great Nalanda masters. So we're looking at texts and systems that originated in India and were expounded by great Indian philosophers.
이거 선생님이 돼서 이거 태보 친구 신년단 나봐 신년단 나봐 나면 돌아왔네 나봐 기위 신년 티전 되는 게 봤다 장주선이 뜻이 축속이 지는 방어스.
So let's get back to the text, pick up from the point that we left off yesterday. So so we started to look at the branch of or method of excellent trainings. Now we started to look at the extensive explanation. We reached the third point, which is the specifics. We've covered the first point, which is dedicating virtues for the welfare of sentient beings. Let's pick up from verse 102 that comes under the section of one should never discard the spiritual master and the trainings of the Mahayana. In reading through verse 102, it says, even at the cost of my life, should I forsake a spiritual friend, skilled in the meanings of the Mahayana, who abides in the supreme mode of conduct of a Bodhisattva. So the commentary of Gyatso Dhamma says too that I would always rely upon a virtuous friend of the Mahayana, one that is skilled in all the meanings, the vast meanings of the Mahayanas. I will always, the one that abides in the vow and the supreme mode of conduct of the mind of enlightenment. I will never forsake that person, even at the cost of my life.
제 다치당 긴간주 신이 된주 거디 숑 간이는 텐데야지 내가 서우 안디나마야 대고집이 기위 신인데 안 티징이 되는 개바 전주선비 또슈 비게 dimji kanji tsenden jila ya tengu guri se tunda tiris dimji tsenden jila maten le kyon kariyo se di dimji jila ya maten ba ina rangi lodre yagi dro maros onzu giwi shinil tengu ya di rangi lodre yagi kompat dro ya chidi inza dimji chi ya lamden tungin chi meba ina 아니 템비 고든 상금면서 디숭고레스라.
So in general, it is important to rely upon a spiritual teacher, but even more so here when we look at the relying upon a spiritual master in the context of the Mahayana. So we need to rely upon a fully qualified spiritual teacher that will teach us the Mahayana, that is not only versed or skilled in the Mahayana, but is also skilled in the conduct of the mind of enlightenment, the practice of the mind of enlightenment. You might wonder, what is the fault of not relying upon a fully qualified spiritual teacher? Well, without relying upon a fully qualified spiritual teacher, our wisdom or our intelligence will not improve, will not increase. So the whole purpose of relying upon a spiritual friend, a spiritual teacher, is to develop our mind, develop our wisdom and intelligence. And without doing so, our intelligence will or wisdom will not increase.
다 시바 칸나 퇴좀 제비 실리니스 도델레 템바타 텐줄레 템보 텐줄라 텐라보 담분 도델레 템바니 빠종와이 남텔레 라마 템비 수텔 랍스.
Now, the fourth point in the extensive explanation of the branch or method of excellent training is the basis one hears and reflects upon. There are 2 points in that section, training in reliance upon the sutras and then training in reliance upon the treatises. Let's begin with the 2 verses covered by the first point, training in reliance on the sutras. Now, we'll begin with the first 2 lines in verse 103. And these 2 lines read, I should train in devoting myself to my spiritual master in the manner taught in the biography of Sri Sambhava.
아니 강나 퇴숨 제국을 했으라 우리 강나 퇴숨 제국을 가리기치도 퇴숨 제국을 세디 공기 가리기치도 라마 땡고를 세디 된다디 내가 찍라 파고도 왔으라 가리기치도 라마 땡고를 했으라디 랑기 로드 기고를 했어 랑기 로드 기비치 라마 땡고를 했어 로드 기야기 로드 telaya 아니 탑단 시럽 이여기 나니 탑비기 제원인지 준비 시치비기 아니 잔주고 셈내야 로드기발라 아니 잔주스미 라바나시 진네 아니 로투고 그레스 잔주스미 라바나시 진네 레라 아니 잔주스미 강 라바텔야 랍고 그레스 딘즈 잔주스미 랍자 땡인기 기위신이들라 대바치미 기위신이스 우리 델땡고 그레스 다 뒷tem비기 텔템바서마스 디기 아니 라마디 가르땡 거레스 라운디 아니 태버침비 쇼 아니 잔주스비 라바템비기 아니 도델라 소바 어딘지라야 코즈라 라고 그레스 라 아니 텔야 도델라 라바타 텐젤라 라바스 텐젤라 템바스 담보타 도델라 템바디 가레스나 빠종이 남테나야 라마템비 술 라바난 신친 로고 그레스.
So what do we need to do? Well, we need to study, reflect, and meditate. For what end do we want to do that? Well, it is for the same purpose as relying upon a spiritual teacher, relying upon a lama, in order to increase, in order to develop our wisdom and intelligence. So what is the purpose in relying upon a spiritual teacher? Well, the spiritual teacher teaches us method and wisdom. Methods such as loving concern for others, great compassion, and the mind of enlightenment, so that will train just like Bodhisattvas. We need to train just like Bodhisattvas, and in order to do that, we need to be taught by a spiritual teacher. So that spiritual teacher needs to be from the Mahayana, one that is skilled in the ways of the Mahayana. Not only that, but the teacher needs to be skilled in the scriptural system of the Mahayana, in the sutra sets of the Mahayana. And for that reason, when we just look at the 2 points that are made here by Shantideva, the basis one hears and reflect upon. First off, we have training in reliance upon the sutras, and then training in reliance upon the treatises.
동북거바 키우 빠숑기 남들리 라마템비 수 리기부 기비싱이 기양타바 선비 잔주선바 남니 남르노스 무동시 치소 제버송바타 라보스.
So there are a couple of pages that are missing from the English translation that is provided for Geshe Rinpoche's commentary. So Chugila had an old copy of those pages, so I'll scan them in the lunch break, during the lunch break, and send them through to everyone else. Then we read through the first 2 lines in verse 103. I should train in devoting myself to my spiritual master in the manner taught in the biography of Sri Sambhava. Now, Geshe Rinpoche says, with respect to that, from the life story of Sri Sambhava in the array of Stock Sutra, the way of relying on a teacher, child of good family, the Bodhisattva were perfectly guided by virtuous friends, will not fall into the low realms. So one should train according to how it is explained extensively in this sutra.
that dom gyawndi ani chanju semba imba inaya an teba chimbe givishingi imase ngandro tong ita nyenga yobadi ani sigdi ta khodo asra tinza chanju semba pen teba chimbe givishingi sembi chanju semba no ani ta ngandro tong mare islam di dosho ya chanju semba inaya ani lamden chingi teba chimbe givishingi yang tawa chimena ani ka ko ya ani thomamebani komdebegi ani nyumu tosomdi ani samigilo yabanza diwangi ani lungai sumbi chawon norwala soba ani yonsik baris diyombayana diwangi ani ngandrola kesi baris tinza ani thambuni pe sabzu chinkoyati kichimure sungosare.
Even if you're a bodhisattva, if you do not take on a proper Mahayana spiritual friend, there is a danger that you will fall into the miserable realm, as indicated by the array of Stock Sutra citing the life story of Sri Sambhava. Again, I will read through that section. It says, child of good family. The bodhisattvas who are perfectly guided by virtuous friends will not fall into the low realms, which means that those who are not guided by a fully qualified spiritual teacher, there's still a danger for those bodhisattvas to fall into the lower realms. So we need to rely upon a perfect spiritual teacher that will reveal the paths to us. And as we've been affected by the 3 poisonous afflictions, since sun without beginning and up until now, and we've already accustomed ourselves to those afflictive states of mind, it is still possible that in certain situations we will come under the sway of those afflictive states of mind, create physical and verbal actions that are mistaken, so that there is a danger that they will lead us to a miserable state of existence. And therefore, we need to take care. We need to be careful that that does not happen.
Teven dodi labar char. Namgi nimbun dodi ni toma nindu tabar chas.
Let's look at the next 6 lines. It says, this and this is another training spoken of by the Buddha. I should understand through reading the sutras. I should read the sutras because it is in them that the practices appear. To begin with, I should look at the Sutra of Akashagarbha. Further, the points of advice from this commentary and the other trainings taught by the Buddha should be understood by reading the Mahayana Sutras. One should read the sutras because in them the trainings are explained extensively. Specifically, those that have generated engaging vows should read first of all the Sutra of the Superior Essence of Space, which is the Sutra of Akashagarbha.
가리임바 하고야 아니 탑 약수들이야 아니 수수 간르지는 주구여봐야 하고여봐 참으로 아니 니토야지 연결해서 모든 것들이 선자 탐지를 편바 쇼세하게 만남 개발점기 선자 탐지를 편집 주투기 니버자원이 요마로 왔으라
So here, Shantideva points out a text that we should certainly consult in order to become more informed. The Sutra of the Arya Akashagarbha. So we want to attend a state not just for ourselves, but for the sake of all sentient beings that extend to the reaches of space. For their end, we want to attain benefit and happiness. And we're looking for the best method for bringing that about, for accomplishing that. We're looking for the way to engage in that. In order to be able to engage in that, in order to make sure that we are capable of doing that, it's not enough just to make prayers, to make aspirations. May I attain the state of Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings that extend to the reaches of space. Simply making such prayer is not going to cut it. So we need to engage in the method, and therefore we need to study.
당직 미kim 제베션도 송니 아니 공부도 로고 연자 dombi tamsik making revision somalaya tamsik khariyoba lavja khariyoba ani tsabi npigi khariyoba yanga khariyoba samlo ani nangini bin do namaya chisi chin soyorenza tambunin delaya chik ani shilsabu chin tagoya kichimures.
And particularly when we think of what we need to study, what we need also to study is the system in relation to the vow, the Bodhisattva vow. We should guard the Bodhisattva vow in a way that we would guard our own eyes. We need to guard not only the vow, but also the training. We need to guard the samaya, the pleasures that we make in relation to the vow and the training. And we should guard them as if we were to guard our own eyes. For that end, we need to become informed. Page 50. Thank you. Okay. Now, we'll find it. That's it. Keep going, keep going, keep going.
There,
No, no, it's
there you are,
here.
sorry.
Bingo. Yeah. All right. So Alan Carter sent me the other version of the text that contains the missing pages. So thank you very much, Alan. I had it somewhere because I had a look at it a few days ago and it just disappeared. I can't find it anymore. So now, so we were reading through this section now, sorry. So we're quoting this section from the array of stock sutra, and then Geshe read through the rest of the commentary, these 2 paragraphs.
니버 땡줄 된 라바니 강실 따도 제바니 텔리 자체 잡된비 라바콘 뛰바야 니바양데 양다 다스
Let's look at the next point in the commentary. It is training in, also the text, training in reliance upon the treatises. Again, that section covers 2 verses, 105 and 106. It says, to begin with, let's see, we'll begin with verse 105. It reads, I should definitely look at the compendium of trainings again and again, because what is to be constantly practiced is clearly and extensively shown there.
직분으로 강기체를 따도 랍선 제바니 랍디 텔리 류 론주 게자나 땅 송원 빼와 시 숨중이지 권이 야채 잡도 때문에 하고 공유 때봐야 네버 양다 양도 따버 차우스
So we read through verse 105. The commentary to this verse says, thus the training practice should also study repeatedly the compendium of trainings, where it explains extensively in 32 aspects how to give up, protect, purify, and increase one's body, possessions, and roots of virtue.
대다디 샴방제 세디 단달 하바꾼 뛰바디 야스지무 시와라 코나랑기 송샤바치 대나나야 전주선비 다지 남자 손담 소로 아니 기부 전자 아니 내가 내려 소문 보고 아니 디나나 여버들이야 야부치 스로치 시비 되레스.
So here Shantideva refers to the compendium of training, which is another text that he himself composed that extensively explained the trainings of Bodhisattvas. So since Shantideva says that since it is already explained extensively in another text, the compendium of training, he will not explain that here extensively. But those who want to become knowledgeable of that extensive explanation should look at this text, the compendium of trainings.
야나 리싱 돌디비 돈은 콘을 뛰었다. 파벌루드 긴제비 임보 안베베 따버차스.
Just a second, just a second. Just a second, just a second. All right, so I'm sending the file to everyone on Zoom. So, sorry? Yeah. So then Geshe read through the next verse, 106, which says, alternatively, I should sometimes look at the condensed compendium of sutras. Also, I should make an effort to look at the second composed by sorry, to look at the second composed by Arya Nagarjuna.
That dinner, Dokul Tiba said, Yana Tetam in a Rishi Johnson Dodibi, Seven Nikizebi, Dokul Tiba Taos. And Pablo Zebi, Dokul Tiba Nimbo and the Tower Chaos.
Let's read through the commentary to this section. It says, if one is not able to do this, then one should read at least the compendium of sutras composed by the master himself, and the second one composed by Nagarjuna, which summarized the sutras.
어딜 다 전주기 전다디 참소 신고기여라서 이 신바체발라 아니 시발라랑 제비 갑투리 아니 도코니티 버리 아니 고물루기 제비 캬버든 고물루기 제비 아니 도코니티 버소야 세체네 아니 전주선비 라비자 타시저 강여버디 아니 네벌 체치니 냠내는 주고리스.
So the message that Shantideva gives here is that we certainly need to know how to practice. We need to know the training. In order to do that, then it says if you want to become knowledgeable of the trainings, then you need to look at the compendium of trainings. You need to look at the compendium of all sutras. You need to look at the second one that was composed by Nagarjuna in order to become fully knowledgeable of what you need to train it.
다 된디바디 간지 가르치고 그랬어. 된디나 간 마가바 괜히 제벌 차왔디 지게선 송비세 파번 돈이 양다 제스.
Let's look at a summary to that in verse 107. That's the next point in the outline. So verse 107 says, I should do whatever is not forbidden in those works. I should impeccably practice whatever trainings I see in order to guard the minds of worldly people. We'll read through the commentary with this section. It says, one should stop that which has been prohibited in the sutras and commentaries, and one should practice that which has not been prohibited. The purpose is to protect the minds of worldly beings and prevent the generation of faithlessness. To this end, one should, upon recognizing the trainings of a Bodhisattva, practice them and training them.
아니 도당 땡주 디기들이야 아니 야구치 세마투 바이노 아니 그냥 가르쳐 그래서 나온디 난저 제 가르쳐 제 가르 맞춰 디기 아니 냉이 넘버 야구치 체투 말했으라 다란도 체투 말했어 인자 디마투나 데니 슈마투세 이 아니 네바 용데티 고충이 차면서 네바도 시고야지 Signi Sanji Karkavu, Karnandu, and Chanjusim Bichaval, Karlagudu, Karni Kagu, Tusayabu, Shimitoni, and Chanjusim Bichaval, Jubaina, and one year, any Tusutundon Jiganamali, Chim Tentuyagi, and a Javadi, that to do Legoris.
If we do not study the sutras and the shastras, the sutras and the treatises, we will not be able to act without fault, to have a faultless behavior. We will not be able to well distinguish between what is right and wrong, or what is the good or the positive thing to do or the negative thing to do, in the sense that knowledge will not be developed in our mind by itself without studying the sutras and the shastras. So therefore, we need to study. We need to study what the Buddha taught. We need to study the training that the Buddha laid out. We need to study what we need to study what things are prohibited and what things are permitted. And if we become knowledgeable of those things and we behave in a way that accords with the instructions, we can accomplish a great meaning even within a short span of time. If we don't do that, in that if we don't take the time to become informed of the teachings of the Buddha, the trainings, the things that are prohibited, the things that are permitted, if we just within a short span of time try to get involved with all sorts of practices and be a little bit erratic about what we do in a practice, and still allow our mind to be governed by anger, attachment, and so forth, there is a danger that at some point in time, shortly after that, we will think that all the practice that I've done so far didn't help me even in the slightest. So there's no point in doing that. Maybe I should just leave it aside and do something else. So there's a danger that's that way of thinking will be developed.
and Tunguyus in the young tragic and Yahoo Chigamaji Tonaya and Sanzamaya and Zumjugu Mad Georgian Tabre to teach young does. Pena Ganuchi Dawa Imbaina. Shogi choose somebody a charge, Shanchi. I need the Shandon now, Gomgap. Choose doing the Chega Sajilia, Shoulder chip. Teni any Chavisi, choose Goba Yamelia. Ani gedu tsulaya peja timi ningun kalapad. Ani ningun shela gyamni. Ani chuzo tambo di chega dili ni gozu ni. Konda chuzo nga di chega zbodi chabetri. Din zamshani yang shenden na. Dosi chuzo goba chube parala sim. Chuzo somba la yashan. Di nimak takba. Ra tos na wigi. Kotse kangbo la ya. Gondo geju gobchu kazu di rang ya. Bet nimachi na wigi. Timdisibu Temach Yunguyores, Radan Nazodoziki, and Chuchik Nislaya, that's Kandi in the Manado Che, Gom Gagio, Toto Delinas, Sem the Kasakalan camp, and it did Hama di Gajet and Tonga Share, and it Melakatayana so Tuski only, and it Sem the Pan di Kabushuros.
At least Geshe says that he can share his experience with us. So for most of his life, he relied upon his spiritual teacher, upon his Lama. And he had a great chance to see, to observe all the different things that his teacher did. And in that sense, you can say that he had a chance of observing the lifestyle of his teacher, whatever he did throughout the day. So Geshe said that he spent quite a few years studying, trying to put things into practice. But then in looking at what his teacher did, he can recognize how his effort in study and also in practice are really too small, or is really too small. He says that his diligence is really too meager. So his teacher, for example, used to wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning do some prayers and then do some meditation. And that took him to 7:30 in the morning, when he had his breakfast. After breakfast, he still continued to study some text, to read some text. There were some classes that were conducted till lunchtime. Then after lunchtime, still classes continued up until 5:30 afternoon. Then again, there were some prayers and some meditations to do, and he went to bed at 9 o'clock in the evening. So that was day in and day out for most of his life. So if you live like that for 18, 90 years, certainly your life becomes fruitful. Whereas when we then look at what we do in comparison, then we might be doing 1 or 2 hours of prayers or then meditation, and it is possible that we allow our mind to be all over the place, to constantly wander off to different objects. We get involved with a lot of idle talk or idle chatter. We criticize others and so forth. So it's really hard to expect that a massive benefit, a massive outcome will come if this is the way that we engage in our study and practice.
아니 야차 야탐바 비기 최래야 깔리겨토와나 아니 샘 교야디 야차 야탐바 샘 규주 땅투 그러스 야차 야니 야차니 참마도 아니 최냥내 마지나 샘 교와 땅야디 샘나 페한디야 야차니 참스마도 용구 말아왔으라 아니 교 칸사바디 데미 제버지마도 교문도 마소미 제버지 요마르스 산지 송요르스 디나주 제버치느야 매교지 통고르스 디치디기 아니 나다가기 슈 냠넨치야디 당금에바당 뇽트라기여바디 야시 야탐바 레샤스 이자 디시미토니 테스치 도리갸바이나 테스 팽그라스라
We sometimes think that I have a holiday tomorrow, a weekend, therefore I can take it easy, go to bed late. Geshe's teacher never had that idea that because tomorrow is a day off, then you can just kick back and relax. Still, there were evenings where he was worried about not being able to finish his job or not being able to finish what he thought he should be doing in terms of reading and so forth. So it was a hard-working person, and in that sense, you can say that it is setting up an example of how diligent we should be, or how much hard work we should also put into our progress. And if you do it in this way, then definitely 100% guarantee that your mind will transform. Your mind will be transformed through putting efforts, the constant effort into it. Without practicing, our mind will not transform, our mind would not change. So it's just like we said that a result will not arise without its causes. If the causes are complete, the result will arise. The result will not arise without creating the causes for that. So it's not enough just to study, we also need to put it into practice. But also Geshe says that looking at least his own personal experience, in not practicing enough, doing too little practice, putting not much effort into one's practice, also not a lot is going to be accomplished. Whereas if you work hard, you'll reap the benefit.
Terdangi tagas ngarang gigin kyashawa dibdi zawani ni mesro pen dangan zu lomba dinang ya and touching on the Chashasagi and so the Kavkalaya, Lam Sorum Pingoras, Ani Pena and Kenzuru Gistret in the Shuyoras, we eventually Gistoga Shuyoras, the Kanji, Ani Sini Gishis in Yore, and Bendigo, Cons Samalaya, can say Samala Trida, Kachita Tony, and some Mikevach, race sugar mother, or did I can't say Sounding Yon Sigmaris, rock, but Dindrich Yoris, the Dindrich Yonia, Kulet Dindrich Jambala Danny, Choma Remado, and Namzana Shingi, any Konzan choosing ye, any camp gives in dead in it, any same you and Regis on the Omarasra.
최근에 서버린 부채 컨솔 부채 콘솔라데 그런 개겐톨라케 치나 얌나 그런 쪽. So Geshe is not just putting his teacher up on a pedestal. It's rather that it's really being genuine about it. If you ask Kyabje Lama Sopa Rinpoche or Khenso Rinpoche, Geshe Steering, if you ask Geshe Dogo, if you ask Geshe Samten at Sydney, or other Geshes who know Geshe's teacher, all of them would testify to the degree of effort and hard work that he put into his study and practice. So then, thinking then how we then relate to our time or to how much effort we put into our study and practice. If we think that, well, I have a break now, so this is the time to really slack about. I can really kick back and relax, go here and there. There's not a lot of benefit. There's not a massive result will not come from being too scattered during the holidays.
And it six some jamba jigi, turn on to assembly a pingrevesna, Yachit Yatamba, Ping Marwas, these are six of mine, but turn young language surusati, vacation with us.
Let's look at the conclusion to the branch of method of excellent trainings in verse 107. No, sorry, we looked at verse 107. Let's look at the next section, which is the conclusion. It is necessary to put into practice the meaning without living it on the level of mere words. So we spoke about study, reflection, and meditation. Without engaging in study, reflection, meditation, if we live whatever we do to being just words, meaning that we just speak about it without doing it, there's no benefit that we will reap from that. So this section brings to conclusion, this chapter to conclusion, saying that as it is necessary to put into practice the meaning without living it on the level of mere words, there are 2 points that are made here. Mindfulness and introspection are required in all places of the training, and the actual meaning in the last verse in this chapter.
There was the Bena Sanji Karisong Yabadi, any Shimba Samjigi, Rang Assembly, Pembingiba, Yomaras, Sanji Divi Song, Sanji Chanjusu Song, Sanji Pigi, and Sheriff Song Yor Slabdena, and Sanji Song Yor, Di Lava Samjigi, Sosu Semlaya, Pendi, Kaburedos, Sanji Kansomba Di, Sosu Chegovach, Sosu Chegovach, Tomaina, and Shini, and Yamlen Jugach, Yonsarasra, and Di Sosu Cheval, Denny, and Sanji Khan Levatia, and Nanzule to get. Or those Jin Drogo was res,
Just becoming knowledgeable about what the Buddha said is not going to cut it. Even if you are really skilled, knowledgeable in what the Buddha said, there's no guarantee, it is not certain that it will help your mind. So you might be able to draw different citations from scripture in saying that in that situation, the Buddha said that and that, in the other sutra, Buddha said this and that. You might be able to cite all those different sources, but if you don't really apply them to yourself, there is very little benefit that your mind will get from that. So we need to put into practice what the Buddha said. We need to take it to heart and put it into practice. And if we do that, then we will get to the level that the Buddha achieved.
해빈낸 타달라 젬바당 시진 송고바당 우기테노 담보 다빈낸 타달라 젬바데 시진 고바니스 류당 셈기 내가가 양다양 따차와 디니 권는 돌는 시진 송 생기토스.
So the first point is mindfulness and introspection are required in all places of the trainings. Let's look at verse 108. It says, the defining characteristics of introspection in brief is only this: to examine again and again the states of my body and mind.
Tilda habitne tadalaya and tembagogres tembi songtoni and shijing songores laldi tembakivalaya habitne tada shingogros shingni nishi togi tembalegri mato and tembayong mevas ro is a shing and dig togi and shimba dieta ginjang di and tembe song and tembe yovaina and shijing dig the mendiki and shijingia pigia nyatsa chesado chara chesaji yungu yoros ro.
When this section says mindfulness and introspection are required in all places of the trainings, it means that, first of all, you should become knowledgeable about the points in the training, rather than all the places. All the essential points in the training should be known by you. If you know the points in the trainings, then you can sustain mindfulness with respect to them, and you can also have introspection. Without, first of all, developing the knowledge of the essential points in the training, you will not be able to sustain mindfulness and introspection. So you apply mindfulness to them, which does not forget the points in the training, and you also apply the aspect of introspection, which is knowingly engaging in actions. It is like this spy or watcher that makes sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing according to the training.
Redinza karso taji tembe sonyari shijingi sonyari pen hadun taji shijingi sonkep chesagi sonyagi kodamasuna lunga yisuyung goras lunga yisungi chawa cheba pod lunga yisung toni chawa chegum dos dinza chawa dim jigda mandik tia pena so luida ngagi chawa jig mandik ti ani sem kong ta sem kong di jigda mandik di ngubi nesole ya ta otu sin drondi ani chi karsota lenyi gi number sing di ta dan je tuye chi shi chaya chi ra madong gansu chi and so digi sambadia and norde yo mambuchi dig maso samdevadia yanko and tada de desaj tindi mambuchi yungu yanza ani yaguji majambaina and zogi munze chetuya de shindu kabu tuzu munze chemaduna ani shijing chara chesede yoya mefichi o dus chagores.
So it says here that we need to guard introspection and mindfulness with respect to all the essential points in the training. So to guard mindfulness and even more so to guard introspection is guarded with respect to our actions of body, speech, and mind. So we act with our body, speech, and mind. When we act with our body, speech, and mind, we want to act together with mindfulness and introspection. So to decide whether our actions of body, speech, and mind are correct or incorrect, whether it is the right thing to do or not the right thing to do, it depends on our motivation, whether our motivation is the right motivation or not the right motivation. And in order to judge whether our motivation is right or wrong, then we also need to look at reality, to look at how things exist and to assess if we understand reality and what is the best course of action in light of reality. So we can then know whether a particular course of action is the right one. Often we don't really look it up. We make assumption that whatever we do is either the right thing to do without really looking at what the motivation is or what reality is. We make an assumption that because I did it, that was the right thing to do. Or we can also make the assumption that since someone else performed an action, it isn't necessarily that this action was not the right thing to do. So if we behave in that way, then we're going to waste a lot of time. And in wasting so much time, also introspection will not be guarded. There will not be that watchman or that spy that checks and verifies that whatever we do is the right thing to do. The commentary to verse 108 says, investigate repeatedly while engaging in the actions of body, speech, and mind with a wisdom that can distinguish between having transgressed the trainings or not in neutral actions, and whether or not one has fallen under the control of the afflictions. This alone is, in brief, the definition of not degenerating introspection. Let's look at the actual meaning of the conclusion that it is necessary to put into practice the meaning without leaving it on the level of mere words. So to that verse 109 says, they all have to be practiced with the body. What is accomplished by only talking about it? In the sick person cured merely by is the sick person cured merely by studying medicine?
Nebala Pengmaros, the Nanshingi and Jipigi, Sikzam and Shibigi, Ten Yamsumanana, and similar Pengmaris. To the delicious rock.
This verse is quite clear. It doesn't help a sick person if the doctor just learns medicine. If that patient is not diagnosed, and an appropriate medication is given according to the condition, simply by the doctor knowing what needs to be done is not going to help. So similarly, studying, knowing just the terms and the words without putting them into practice is not going to help. What we need to do is, first of all, study and then to put into practice the meaning of the words that we have studied.
Tedar Shibachin, Luki Te, Joan Yamlin, the Da, Jabal Chawa, Ingi, Yamlin, Meba, Namdram Mambu, Soviet, Sixum Jebi, Govachish, Jones, Chishing Drup, Jones Yamandrupo, Benam Henche Lavatsam, Nebatalan, Penduram, Pembermint, or Shenos.
The commentary begins with saying, having understood these points and the need for them to be practiced, one needs to put them into practice accordingly with the body. Without practice, merely by reciting many lists, one will not achieve the purpose. For example, is a person cured merely by studying the actions of medicine? No, they are not.
Dorduna Tsultrim sumiye yang, dombi Tsultrim, sodar kichebo, ngosum, tedan tumulu lobo, tomar kechati, te sona shenda jen songi gyola, te masona shenda jen masongi gyowe, dombi Tsultrim nyama, domba tata nyama gyo, dobali sonsos, sodar ki domba nyendu ki yinbi, nyamdu soni, chanchu simbi lavja shenu tsowa ke chebani, ten magowe noa chimbo yinbi, gewa chudu dan sunje tenji mingi, shi, rangshin ki kano mangdo, gongso, dombi Tsultrim lobjin, Tsultrim namdi mindu chola, dongsong yangda yangdu tenji, tenyang pashin chuden du nyamsu nambar chawos.
In brief, although there are the three types of moralities, it is important to initially train in the morality of restraint, either by actually adopting the rules of individual liberation or by acting according to them. If one protects them, then the others will also be protected. If one does not protect them, then the others will also not be protected. If the morality of restraint degenerates, then all the vows degenerate. It is explained in the compendium. If one thinks that the vows of individual liberation belong to the hearers and practices the training of bodhisattvas apart from them, then that is a great fault. One should train in the morality of restraint that abandons the natural non-virtues and is the basis for the morality of accumulating virtue and benefiting sentient beings.
Tiritadi, Geshe Gyatamba Pena, Sanji Chulia, Sanji Chu Nimbu Susondi, and Tawa Tenjon the Joba Selmeba, Nambuta Chachi, Lama Nambina, Disungori, the Kanji, and Sanji Chu Song Engina, and Di Chagoras, Tawa Tenjon the Joba Selmeba, Di, and Shitsu Di, Shenu Shitajiba Dombigi, and Soderki Dombalaya, two Yabadi, Sevu Shujres, Dindigi Soderki Dombadi Yana, and Chanjusim Domba Yonya, and Nag Domba Yonya, and Domba Sunde Yonya, Di Mena, and Domba Sheni and Larjo Yabadi, and Doyu Kungi Gombainza, and Di Semla Shab Tony, and Chik Suzuki Pilaya. Kasuta Soderki Dombi Tenaya, and Nima Chigmadu Nema Tuvaino. And Vedzun Chegoya, Ketchembu, and Susu Sin Digi, and a Kogobi Yash, non-dinner 2 years.
One should rely respectively on restraint on the opposing conditions of morality and practice it together with the 6 perfections. So we had here a summary of the 3 types of ethics, beginning with ethics of restraint. So ethic of restraint constitutes the very foundation. Abstaining from harm and the basis of that harm. This is the very foundation of the vows that we take. If you have that, then that will constitute the basis for taking on the Bodhisattva vow and also the mantra vow, with a basis for guarding all the other vows if you restrain from harm and the basis of that harm. So it is important as much as we can to make effort in this life in guarding this ethical discipline. It is important to make effort in even doing it for a single day. And if you do it throughout your life, then this is such an excellent opportunity to have an excellent practice in this life. Sorry, I have to go back to the beginning and add something that Geshe left off. That Geshe said I left off. So Geshe began with saying that the 2 principles of the Buddha's teaching are the aspect of the philosophical view of dependent origination and the practice of non-harmfulness. So the practice of non-harmfulness is based on ethics of restraint. It is based on ethic of restraint that restrains from harming others and the basis of that harm.
zamlene ani soderge dombi tenle ya ani shunge yibayina ya ngan jisira pe chigis chembu chigis ra woni yagura so kawa sambura so kanji ani mash sunjele ya dindijele ya shutu ya di woni seram mambul sabi ani gevi tu yimadi yacha jatamba shutu gures.
So, of course, the best scenario for us to be to encounter a spiritual teacher at the earliest stage of our life when we're still young, and then to meet a spiritual teacher, to meet the Dhamma, and to train in stages. But then also we'll look at how it for us happens in practicality. We encounter the Dhamma when we're 40, 50, 60 years old. We then at some point decide to take upon ourselves a pratimoksha vow of individual liberations. And Geshe truly rejoices in our ability to do so. We are fortunate to be able to do that. This is through the force of virtue that we have accumulated in previous lives.
Kanji ani megi pigi chagdangi yang korang toni ani kyo tomo mebani tatabadu yongbaras ra ani chikyo nga shikinengi jimbana kyo tomo meban tatabadu chongbares ineya nganzole ya misegi kepsan rasha waji sukhana chongyo maras sukhana chongmenza nganzole yongyo mar dimenza ditsu ka gyolchini ani 탐kel 도시심을 되면 데모카딘 제리 아니 지 고물루고 쯔비 아니 자갈 파비 요기 아니 펜루츠 제수 주는 로트와이나 아니 자세 자담바 아니 레와 자세 차고로스로.
If we don't take the opportunity, use the opportunity to take upon ourselves a pratimoksha vow, if we do not guard the vows that we have already taken, then as we know that we have been under the influence of anger, attachment, and so forth, since down without beginning up until now, we can see that so far there's no special benefit that we really got from that process. So we need to look elsewhere. What we'll look at, the opportunity that we do look at is, first of all, the teachings that the Buddha, the kind Buddha, has given to us that were also explained by the great Indian masters, by the great Panditas. So since we haven't accomplished any special benefit from not taking vows, not guarding our vows, and being under the sway of anger, attachment, and ignorance since down without beginning and up until now, there is hope for us that we can accomplish something if we look elsewhere and not continue to behave in the way that we have been up until now. To summarize the explanation, Geshe Dhammarinchen says, the person taking the essence of practicing the sequence of the path of the three kinds of beings depends on protecting mindfulness and introspection. Hence, they should always endeavor to be proficient in these. But before we continue, it's good just to keep reminding ourselves that as we follow the teachers, we follow great Indian masters, we have a hope of making a progress, of improving. We can get somewhere through following the path that we have chosen. If we continue to act as before, being under the control of anger, attachment, and so forth, what difference will there be between us and other living beings like animals and so forth? It's not that we can continue to improve or get somewhere if we allow our mind to still be governed by anger, attachment, and so forth. Things can only get worse for us rather than improving.
Tsultrim, Gagargi, Pendutugi, and Sewuchin to Dana Pamshava D. Muyu Nitsuchik, Muyu Nitsuchik, Sondas D. Pilia, Castle Tachik, Muyu Nitsu the Muntumachik, Piggy, me, Samgum the Muntumachik, and Zawin the Remedos, that Tensandro and that more drogolas, on Konambi, Lavsha Javshawadi, Tanguyu Nitsuim, but the more droguza, Tanganzu digitally a shoot to a D. That's sonums in the Dirisra. Hungi, Pasha Sambo, Jevasana, that digitally young ones in Chinamado, and the Shamba Dodochi, Yomaras, there are.
So looking at what the Buddha, the teacher, said before, and the Indian master that came after that, if you look at what they taught, the path that they've laid out, you can see that it is something that is in line with reality. They're not teachings that were given by someone that was deluded, that has completely lost touch with reality. If you look closely at those teachings, you can see that they're getting closer and closer, or you're getting closer and closer to reality. And if you engage with that, you accumulate merit. Just to engage with that actually is an indication of merit that we have accrued in the past. We have previously placed imprints upon a mind stream. It's not that you need to look elsewhere and find some other concrete evidence for having some connections with that I've created in the past. Simply being able to engage with the Buddha's teachings and the teachings of the great Indian masters is something that is greatly meritorious, that is facilitated by having placed imprints of virtues previously.
And Munzin Chedi, Munzin Cheni, and Tether to draw a data, and Shijin Yang Tabadi, Dichagiosaris, the Kanjim Dordina, and Shijin Yashi di, and Rang Namju Compel Tancheni, ko Lenny number GB, Namju Tony, and Lenny Son Jib Chetuayana, that Shijin only the Dichagoris, and Judom like the Tindirojas rock.
So then to conclude this point, if you first of all develop knowledge, then based on developing knowledge, you develop the wisdom that can discern between the positive, the negative, the right thing to do, what is not the right thing to do. Through that you got mindfulness. Through that you got introspection. Introspection is gathered through not only knowing what you need to do, but also through making sure that your wisdom, that your intelligence is developed through doing the right thing and avoiding actions that are not the right actions to do. This is what introspection is. The name of the chapter, this is the commentary on the 5th chapter called Protecting Introspection, from the commentary on the introduction to the actions of Bodhisattvas, called The Entrance for the Children of the Conqueror. So we'll leave the text here for today. Tomorrow we will begin with the 6th chapter from Shantideva's text, the chapter that teaches patience. So,
Is it okay if at some stage we get to know some of the right and wrong things to do from that sutra that was mentioned, that if I pronounce it, I will pronounce it wrong?
you mean Akashagarbha?
Yes, please.
Sorry? So, all right, so I'll just repeat it for the people at home. So Kerry is asking if we could, sometimes in a later stage, also get some teachings on what the Buddha said in that sutra by Akashagarbha, what is the right thing to do, what is not the right thing to do, and so forth. Dila nangka nimbogi do chik shedwa, chezan jemala kanan di do di shishan sange karesumba di lanja tang panja kare mi te she to get base.
너 디시샤는 송거르스 존중다.
Well, Shantideva here is teaching his guide on the basis of this sutra.
So the 27 doors to
The second
conduct and the 9 antidotes that were taught in this chapter would be good things to follow. So
the 27 gates for mistaken conduct and the 9 antidotes that we're taught in this chapter are the good points to follow.
Yes, as far as this goes with behavior and stuff.
Kabdila yandi Shiwale Kabdila ni Nyamakara Dila Nyembo dinde Nenga Mindra Gu Tan Panjaya Mana Choba Nyemba Mindra Nista Dun Kabdila dinde Shedwa. Chenzangatsu Kes Panja Lanja Shewa na Tolochina Tagana.
그래. 답변에 전주 샘비기 랍잘이야. 아니 자동 저기에 니시시 시두기. dorдuna dichagores.
Yes, but also Geshe said that when we look at what are the main things in the Bodhisattva practice, it is also avoiding the 18 root downfalls and the 46 secondary offenses.
자위다 비즈만치 ken골디는 간즈 까우까우야 소더기 덤비기 아니 랍잘라야리 까우까우야 찬주 셈비기 아니 랍자 어두스 한수 아니 비기기 랍자랑기 토라야 어두스 되는 간즈 그래서 아니 고들체나 나라이나 가위스 라
Yeah, and also from time to time, if we have some discussion or teachings on the rules of the Pratimoksha or the Bodhisattva vow, Geshe is also happy to do that. This is also something that is beneficial. You mean to give or? Yeah. So, and also if Geshe has some time, maybe later on, to give the refuge vow and also the Bodhisattva vow. Yeah, so we will still continue this year with the teachings on Shantideva's text, and once we get to a certain point this year, then we'll also have the time to do the Bodhisattva vow again, to renew the Bodhisattva vow.
Would it also be okay, please, if Geshe can continue to teach a little bit more on the 6th session Guru Yoga that he started, I think it was last year, we had a bit of a teaching on it, and he's going to go through a little bit further on, I believe.
근데 그런 게 니말로 그런 돈쪽 가면 nenjotes in the share resa. 아니 제말아야 두트라와이나 디 무트네 된 로트와이나스.
Laxos 대장 대사람.
Okay.
대사람 제 나도 그게 어떤 점고라서 아. 자, 자기 마음이 상고라서.
Yeah, no, to be able to do all of it, we just need to make sure that we have all the conditions in place. Geshe is not the only one. All the other things also need to be in place. So, if we get all of them, Geshe will continue with those teachings.
And putting in requests, could Geshe also please teach introductory on karma too? I'd like to hear him talk a bit more about karma. Please.
The legume dragi montro de ande chetwainas.
네 칸 재정에 다시 쉬었대. 네 칸심버디 네 칸심버디 셰야기 날이야. 가고 예승의 가전 쉬자이스. 그러. 근데 네 시기에서 참고 네 시기에서 나셔봐나. 아니 망부지로 뜬 거에서 가시 됐지. 마대어선에 야문도 왔어.
Yes, Geshe said that before. He said that he's happy to share whatever little knowledge he has with others. But rather than kind of him from his side saying that kind of this is what I'm going to teach today. This is what I'm going to teach now, and so forth. It says that being too pushy with him wanting to teach different stuff might upset someone else. So we can look at all those teachings later on and just create the conditions for them.
이제 가서 단디 단단 조대비 깔아야 망치아로 튕고르스라. 먼저 전주 갑제 라므름 갑제 안치 공다 피기기 난중 오토 갑제 안 딘질이야 안 찬스 냠슈 치치 안 튜틀이야 이 저와 땅투와이나 되니 가서 틀린 거 터니 안 시우 차야다 안 뒤제 당진 치도 연구로 왔으라.
But on top of studying here Shantideva's text, we also have teachings on the steps of the path to enlightenment and also the Thursday evening teaching. So Geshe is also encouraging us to find the opportunities to ask questions in order to query, in order to clarify whatever doubts we have in relation to different topics. So it's not only, the opportunities that we have are not only in listening to formal sessions, but we also have the ability to bring up questions and then find some more information through that discussion. So please use those opportunities as well.
Thank you.
Amasange dugune dowachi kamalupa de salagopa shu rimpoche make panan kegyochi yabanyam pame baya gone kondo pewash Koweshin County Pendande Wamo Lujuene Chenresi Mountains in Yatso Shapesi Badu thank you Sundru Jupela Seche Shama Mountains in Yatso Sawa Devso Shindu Jangun Yahweh Zenkyo Pere Kunso Topo Chasong Kowe Le Mandu Paso Jerikundu Shate Sho.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katz and Geshe and everyone. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
네, 제가 그렇게 부모님들이